that M1 class solar flare right here. Okay. Now, I just interviewed Stan Deo about this, and he had some incredible footage of this eruption on the backside of the sun. Look at this explosion on the far side of the sun. And this is an incredible event that also, according to Mr. MBB, is sending these incredible gravity waves. So is the sun activity tied to the volcanoes that are taking place? I mean, is it all tied together? This is incredible. This is why we need some help, some answers from the man, the legend, the without question, prophetically and biblically inspired, with great information to help us every day, Mike from around the world. I'm going to plug in and get him on here right now. Mike from around the world. Are you there, Mike?
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
Oh, I tell you what, I am blessed and highly favored. You sound energetic tonight.
Well, I am, I've been going for about 3 days, but I'm good to go.
Well, Mike, I would like to know what in the world's got keeping you going for 3 straight days, but maybe you can't share everything about that. But let's get right into something. First of all, Ukraine, okay, what's going on today? The shelling going on between the separatists, the Russian separatists, and the Ukrainian forces over there. Can you tell us, Mike, is there a false flag involved? Is it just somebody trigger happy? What's going on?
Well, let's clarify this because I heard that word false flag being used. By the way, if you note Secretary of State's comments, you will find some correlations between your show's topics, right?
Yeah.
And what he was saying, right? Of course, he's 3 weeks late. Right, 3 weeks late.
Right, he's about 3 weeks late. Okay.
Yeah, he's about 3 weeks late.
Okay.
But everybody has to, it's time to see something for what it is. Pastor Paul, so many things are about to go poof, right? It's going to really mess some people's minds up. So let's start with the Ukraine here. Number one, everybody remembers when Putin took Crimea, right? You remember that?
Yes.
The day he took Crimea, and they said, well, there are Russian forces engaged right now. Remember Putin? He said, those are not Russian soldiers. We don't know who they are. Maybe they're, people acting on their own. Remember he said that?
Yes, I do.
He said that the very day they invaded. He said it the day after. He denied it, right? So he has a good poker face. And that is, if you match the events of Crimea with the events that are happening now, with some of the events that happen in other, let's just say forceful happenings with Russia, you're going to find a pattern, right? Putin has a specific pattern, a modus operandi, where he does not really convey information. He has a good poker face. You really can't read his face unless he's highly frustrated. So this guy he's doing the same thing he did with Crimea. As far as moving vehicles, I know they're showing footage of vehicles leaving Ukraine. Here's the problem with that. If there was one piece of footage they showed a month ago that they recently showed, again, coming from Russia, listening to Channel 1, that's Russia's state TV, they're the ones that were saying that in the Ukraine, there's some biological weapons that could be used at any moment. They were spreading this over their airwaves. So what this means is, he utilizes all the rest of the nations to gain ground. Putin is very smart. He's an ingenious tactician. And so what he does is he uses the rumor mill to further his own agenda. He'll work within it, right? And keep sanctions off. He had the entirety of NATO confused dealing with Crimea. He was already inside of Crimea. He had secured that location, but NATO could not. They were like, well, did he take it or not? Is it somebody else? So he had them chasing their own tail. Putin did. So that lets you know how important this land is to him. He's not going to give it up. And when they talk about false flags, what they're attempting to do by way of the media, the more they expose what he is likely to do, the more they delay him from doing it, because right now he can't. There are certain things he can't do right now because they've been discussing it, right?
Right.
He will always do what they did not discuss. That's what he's going to do. And so when they're talking about false flags, this, that, and the other, they're trying to name every scenario they possibly can, so that if it happens, they can say, "See, we told you so." Right? Because the truth is, they have zero control over Russia. Zero. Nobody has control over Russia but Putin. And he runs it the way he wants to run it. But as far as the governmental systems go, right? Hope nobody's looking for any good guys, because anybody who's willing to destroy a lot of people to gain something back they lost, that's more of a tactical mindset than a good person. The people may be good, but the governments are they're going to do what they do, is what I'm telling you. And so Putin has his poker face on. He's absolutely added more troops in this morning to the Ukrainian border.
What?
He pulled back. He pulled back to Belarus, but he also, Putin is doing a move he didn't do before, because he's surrounding the Ukraine right now. He had over in Belarus, he has a base. When the troops did pull back, they pulled back to a combat base that's right outside the Ukraine. So the video, he didn't show where the destination was of these troops leaving. They're going to a combat base right outside the Ukraine. So you have your separatist-controlled area, of course, Crimea, which has been annexed in 2014. So, but he's moving troops to surround the Ukraine, and he has to. That's why all these countries are getting their folks out of there.
So this
and they're
is
doing this back and forth propaganda thing now.
This is why this is very important, because we know that the back and forth propaganda game is being played. This is war, but at the same time, you're confirming for me what I was trying to figure out. I know Putin said, "Okay, we're going to start to pull back." They showed this video of tanks on trains moving, and they played that repeatedly over Russian television. Okay, and that was to calm the populace in Russia not to think that they're going to go to war. And matter of fact, the stock market went up a little bit. Everybody got more relaxed. But you're saying the truth is they didn't pull back. They just repositioned troops. They've brought in more, and there's no pullback at all going on here. They're actually strengthening their position around Ukraine, and that the potential invasion is definitely still on. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Mike?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is big.
He did this. Listen, he did this same thing in Crimea. He did the exact same thing in Crimea. He had all those weapons out there. He sets up in a very strategic way. He normally has his missile launchers sitting in Russia itself. His tanks moved up a little closer in Donetsk. That's when he took Crimea. So he sets up in this specific way, denying the entirety, 1,000 troops in that area. But you have this propaganda machine going. And what normally happens when people start to they start thinking about what's going to happen, they begin to confuse themselves. And every time somebody gets confused in NATO, Putin takes another step forward.
Wow.
Because Putin has an agenda, right? Nothing is going to stop his agenda. He doesn't care how long it takes. He's going to do what he's going to do, and nothing is going to stop that. He has a good poker face. And so when it happens, the day it happens, he will likely say, "That's not us." That's what I'll say. It's not us. The day it happens. He did the same thing with the Ukraine or Crimea. Same thing. So it's amazing to me, Pastor Paul, how quick the media forgets what he did in Crimea. They just can they not remember what is happening? And you have folks that they know what's going on because they have eyeballs in that area. But Putin he's a very straightforward individual. He's very focused in what he has to do, and he's not going to waver in doing it. What he is doing is he's sending NATO a warning that the Ukraine cannot become a part of NATO, because that's in actuality that would almost be like us giving Mexico Texas, and suppose Mexico joined China as a communist country, and we allow them right? If they're in Texas, but they don't belong to anybody. Just say Texas belongs to Mexico, right? They don't belong to anybody. But all of a sudden they say, well, I think we're going to join the Communist Party in China. Well, we don't want that, right? Not in the U.S. We don't want that. And so the same thing is happening in Russia. Ukraine was a part of Russia that's been lost. It is much like Texas, right?
Yes.
It is much like Texas. So if we lost Texas, the U.S. would do everything to get it back, right? We wouldn't care what the cost would be or anything else. We would get it back because we can't secure our country without Texas.
So you're saying
we can't do that.
You're saying the hook is in the jaw. Russia's not going anywhere just yet. And let me ask you, I saw that 6,000 additional U.S. troops from the 101st Airborne were being brought in. Is U.S. troops more and more being deployed as we speak? Is this still part of the process here?
Yeah, it is. They're going to continue to do that to build up certain NATO forces, just in case. They need a bit of strength in Europe, and they need certain forces in Europe for training, so on and so forth, tactical things, just in case the thing gets out of hand. Because what could easily happen in a conflict like this, which is what a lot of people are concerned about this, because there are hypersonics involved, because there are lasers involved, and because this absolutely just breaks the agreements that came about after World War I and II, that no country can, with their military by force, right, alter the borders of another sovereign country. You can't do that. And so Russia, if they break this, they have just broken what took so long to get put together. They're going to see it like this, but that doesn't mean instant war. Now, this is something that people have to look at. If he takes the Ukraine, that does not mean we're in World War III the next day. That's not what it means. If he takes Ukraine, he's going to do it step by step. There's going to be denial. Be a lot of politics involved still. In other words, you'll see him cross a red line, and everybody will say, well, we're going to give you another red line. Don't cross that one, right?
Yeah.
But then, I don't think a lot of people really understand Putin, but they're about to find out who he is. Those individuals, matter with the KGB, people are going to have their opinion of these individuals because they don't know them, right? They don't know their jacket, so to speak, or their packet file, or whatever the case is. Putin is he's very direct, extremely direct, but he can be cold and calculated in those things he does. He can be very cold. He's ordered that people be killed plenty of times. He has, and believe it or not, that's in every single country. No country is excluded from that.
Right.
But I'm just saying this because sometimes we can start looking at these individuals, right? We say, oh, well, he loves his people. He's a good guy. No, Satan loves his little people too. That doesn't make him a good guy, right? So Putin is calculated, and people are going to find out just how cold he can be, especially if it comes down to his country and everybody else. He's going to do what he has to do for his country. Now, as far as patriotism goes, he's doing this for what he calls Mother Russia, right? That's what he's doing it for, Mother Russia, which means he has an old mindset, right? Very proud mindset of his country and what it used to be. Nothing is going to stop him from doing that. NATO, however, NATO is the one that's a bit too nervous about this deal because they're just trying to save face. Right, they're trying to flex a bit more power. Also, if he takes the Ukraine, that's right at the back door.
Yeah, they don't.
Europe.
They really don't want that.
And they don't want that either.
No, they don't want that.
No, they don't want that either. So that's why they will make. If Putin does not take it, he already knows they're going to make Ukraine part of NATO. He already knows this. That's a no-no. Right?
So you're
going to nuclear war before that happens.
So your opinion is that Putin's going nowhere. He's going to keep people on the border. He's going to continue to do the strategy of mush and steal. It's the old thing I heard Mike Huckabee say the other night on television. He said the way Russia's mentality is when you think about the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union was. You take the bayonet and you push it out there, and if you feel mush, you move forward. If you feel mush, you move forward.
Right.
If you hit steel, you stop for a minute and recalculate. And you're saying that this is going to continue to be the strategy until they completely, at some point,
That's right.
they would like
That's
for
right.
NATO to just give Ukraine to them with some kind of an agreement that we're all going to live together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But that's not really what's going to happen, is what I'm hearing you
That's
say.
not gonna. No, that's not
No.
gonna happen. And you know what? That's to say, the guy. When you're thinking about good and evil, you really can't. You really can't see that yet. This guy's going to take care of his country, just like any other person. Just like some mafia leader would take care of his gunman, right? Just like that. But it doesn't make him evil. He's just
No.
he believes in his country. But you have to take a look at NATO.
Yes.
NATO, right? I don't deem these guys as good or evil. I don't, because they're NATO. Basically, you have folks at the top. These folks at the top, you have a few terrible ones up there, right? But NATO is a group of people who are trying to establish a framework. Right now, listen to what they call it. They call it a world order. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
And that Russia is upsetting the world order. That's what they're saying.
Yes, they
So
do.
in other words, they have a set of laws, a set of decrees that they want no one to break. And it's spreading like wildfire. I don't know if anybody notices, but everything is changing right before people's faces. And they might want to sober up about everything in their lives, because NATO has forged ahead into several areas they've never been in before. They have absolutely usurped power, and people just let them do it. This COVID-19 thing, I'm going to call it a thing, because what it succeeded in doing was blinding people to what government has been expanding this entire time. It's been expanding by way of its power, by way of policy. Its rule has been expanding, and anybody in the way, they're going to plow over, and that's what they're attempting to do here. As they continue to push forward, NATO does. They're going to change. Everything is going to change. You know, there are constitutional drafts for changes in just about every single country.
Yeah. That's to help form this one world government, or one governance.
Shake up, because they're changing. When I say they're changing everything, they're going to change everything.
Yes. That's the plan, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, they're going full speed ahead with this. But, Pastor, this Ukraine issue, right? Here's the last piece of this. In the Ukraine, there are shadow forces in the Ukraine. Now, what I mean by shadow forces, there's some pretty heavy equipment in the Ukraine right now, right?
Okay. Yes,
really
yes.
heavy equipment. State-of-the-art equipment. They also have what's called a panic button. If they happen to go into a type panic mode, they're going to get a response from coalition forces of some very advanced equipment. Why? Because they're already, they're within the sphere of NATO right now, right?
Right.
Now, Russia has its operatives in the Ukraine, which report back, and we have our operatives. Speaking as far as NATO does, we have those operatives in the Ukraine that report back. These guys are actually reporting the facts, which they twist for the public. But there's some big problems in the Ukraine. Like, for example, there are some nuclear weapons in the Ukraine. No one knows whose authority they're under.
Right.
And the codes have been altered. The entire firing mechanism, right? Russia made some mechanisms that if it didn't have a command override, it would just self-destruct. It's a mechanical redundant system. But they've rebuilt the whole thing, and no one knows whose authority that's under. No one knows that. So there's some variables in there that are not too safe, because if Russia also has a problem, and Germany, or I'll say Europe has a problem with radical Islamists right now. Do you know that?
Yes.
And there's a problem with Europe, that the radical Islamists may be the ones that actually have infiltrated said forces, and can gain control of some of these launch systems, right?
Yes.
So that can be a big issue. In that case, a horror could be seen, because somebody could, if you're desperate enough, you can blow one of those things in place, right?
Let's pray.
If that's
to
the
God.
case, you're going to see a lot of people go at one time.
Yeah, let's hope to God that doesn't happen and create a catastrophe on a biblical scale, Mike, as you know. Let's change gears for a second, Mike. We want to talk a little bit about the the sun this week, since you were on last Thursday, the sun has been absolutely volatile. And we just had a couple more M1 solar flares, plasma ejections, the CMEs. The backside of the sun yesterday just almost like blew out, which would have been, when I say backside, I mean it wasn't Earth facing, but it was Planet X facing maybe. I mean, what's going on here? And they're saying that these solar flares may have caused what's called gravity waves that actually can be heard. And Mike, before you answer that, I want to play for you what that great that volcano that erupted in Tonga, this is what they heard in Stanley, Idaho, 9 hours later. Listen, folks. Incredible. Watch this. And then about 27 hours later. And then about 48 hours later. How in the world, Mike, can there be a sound this loud be heard this across on the other side of the world?
Bouncing off the atmosphere. As a sound puts out a radio wave, right? It's radio, so it goes all the way around, and it will bounce off the atmosphere back to the surface again. So when something big on one side of the Earth goes off, it's going to, pop back at a specific time on the other side of the Earth, right? At a specific time, and they time it to get the distance and everything else.
Could this is this part of these sounds in the heavens that you said soon we'll be hearing?
The sounds in the heavens I'm talking about, Pastor Paul,
yeah.
I'm gonna say something. It is said that when anything comes from, whether it be a rock or a large body or something like that, right, you can't hear those things in space due to a lack of atmosphere or material, right? Density, lack of density. So you can't really hear the vibrations they put off. But everything in the heavens, they do sing, right? Just like Saturn sings, the rings sing like an orchestra. It's quite beautiful. Jupiter sings. All these planets make noise. You can't hear them due to a lack of atmosphere. So if something were to happen where all of a sudden we had a matter influx in our solar system, which means the atmosphere becomes a bit denser, right? Material coming in. Say, like, for example, some dust. If dust came into our solar system, you're going to have a greater density, right? You're also going to have matter that can transfer energy, which we would hear a sound, which would that would be emitted from the heavens. Something passing, you'd be surprised. Comets and meteorites and things like that, when they pass, you know what they sound like?
What?
Trumpets. Trumpets.
Trumpets?
They sound just like trumpets.
Mike! Really?
Exactly like trumpets. That's what they sound like. And so with an increased material bombardment in our atmosphere, which is what we'll likely have, we're going to start hearing a lot of sounds. That's the first part of it. The second part of the sound issue is, Pastor Paul, when something in the spiritual domain enters or exits this domain, a sonic boom is heard. Right? Yeah. I'm sure that you've heard of this. Yeah. I'm sure that people have been, they've been all by themselves and they heard a big boom, but nobody else heard it around them. I know of groups of people who have heard this and nobody else heard it around them, right? So as these things are given passage to enter into this domain or exit, or they get booted out of this domain, those sonic booms are going to come back again. Now, at one point, we had quite a bit of them. As they isolated the sonic booms and eliminated, aircraft, this, that, and the other, there was a lot of spiritual activity. The correlation was some of the stats concerning crime and everything else, they were absolutely, they went up right after that, right? So we're going to have, taken from two of the individuals at the Vatican, one at Washington, D.C., a couple more throughout universities. We're about to have an incursion of types that is quite serious. It is very serious, in fact. For a long time, Pastor Paul, they've been doing a lot of digging, right? All government agencies have looked into this stuff, spiritual stuff, right? The soul, things of that nature. To see it, they want to see it. they've equated that it is energy. So it's actually, you can track that energy, right? They could even see it within the human body. It is energy of some
Wait.
type.
So, would you say that in certain individuals in the Vatican and in Washington, D.C., and maybe some universities, are they studying? Are you saying they're studying the soulical part of man?
They've been doing that, Pastor Paul. But you've had what is it? Possibly, I think if somebody looked at the numbers, it's been hundreds of billions of dollars have been poured into research to locate or to see or to track the emissions of the soul of man. A lot of your top medical doctors, top medical personnel, they understand that the body does not operate without the soul, right?
Right.
They found this out with clones. In fact,
What?
when they make a clone, there is a transition effect when you make a clone. Something happens when you have that a clone under a very controlled environment. You always notice these energy fluctuations, right? So they've been doing this though since the 40s, I believe, is when they started the serious study. In fact, in the 40s, just about everything started.
Are you saying? Are you first of all? You're saying that we have human clones. Okay, I can believe that. But are you saying that these clones don't have souls?
No, they notice some energy fluctuations, right? Upon the it's a cognitive phase of that whatever they're growing. It's a cognitive phase where they actually come in to be themselves. Something enters into them. That's what I'm saying. Something, and they can track this. They know they can sense. They have very special sensors that can sense any type of energy fluctuation.
Okay.
This energy.
Well, wait. Okay, something enters into the clone. Okay, is the clone got a soul, or is there a demonic spirit or some other entity that goes into this clone?
Now they never went that far. They only know that something. There's a energy signature, right, with each one of them that just it explodes and goes away. So they've been trying this for a long time. It's probably part of the reason why there's this fascination with ghosts, right? All this stuff you see on television is probably why, because it was all of this. I mean, Pastor Paul, they have spent countless amounts of hours. They've had the smartest people in the world working on these things. In space, they still run these certain experiments that give way to more devices to track, to see, to do this, but they're not using what these silly devices you see on television. That's not what they're using.
Okay.
They're really watching energy. That's just like for your average person, right? Before a person dies, they emit quite a bit of energy in a certain spectrum. After they're gone, instantly, when they're gone, that is gone. Sometimes when they're still alive, that energy is gone, right? So something leaves the person.
Grams.
They can see this.
I've heard.
Yeah, they can see this.
I've heard that the body will actually weigh 21 grams less at the point of death. That maybe that's the spirit of life. You know, when God took Adam and made him of the dust of the ground, he breathed in his nostrils the breath of life, and man became this living soul. But I've heard this talk about the 21 grams at the point of death. The body seems to decrease in weight. And that could be the soul of man. I don't know.
Well, I know one thing. When they appear, right, when those energy anomalies happen all over the earth, there are sonic booms associated with it. Also, if you think of it this way, the brain keeps your memories, right? It keeps your memories. People with Alzheimer's and things, dementia, they don't have good memories, correct? No. But if you're just spirit, you have a perfect memory. Right? You know all things, which means your body is more like a barrier, right? It's a limiter, is what it is. The body keeps people from doing specific things, but outside of the body, there is no limitation. Just like CERN found. CERN found that when they harness antimatter from this other dimension, it is about, I believe, the 40 or 50 times more powerful than its counterparts in this dimension, right? So your spirit is totally intact. Your body is a limiter, which keeps a limited amount of things. Most people get caught up on the body and what it can do, but they have forgotten about the spirit or soul of a man, which is in fact the real person, right?
Yeah.
But back to these studies and these booms, with animals, when they cloned animals, they found some things, right? Cloned animals turn deadly sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Very mean. They turn mean. Sheep start biting things they shouldn't. Cows attack people, things of that nature. So that stuff happens. Which my personal view on that is that if God does not sanction creation of anything, but he does that by natural process. But if he does not sanction that, its spirit is coming from those things that are already on the earth, right? And I believe that man gives way to that too, because they give birth to evil things all the time through their emotional state. They also found that out. Anyway, as they do this, they have come to an agreement that when these things enter and exit, sonic booms are heard. That in fact, that's what it is. And then when you start talking to folks, these folks that are worried because there's an escalation right now of let's say these energies. It's almost like they're multiplying all over the place. And true to form, you look in the news, and more you see these awful, hideous crimes. I'm talking about crimes that I wouldn't dare mention here, but they are ridiculous crimes. Like that mother who beheaded her child and her dog because she said the devil told her to do it.
Well, that's demons. I mean, that's people being possessed with demons, and they're hearing these demonic voices in their head. Doctors could say that's schizophrenia, but I don't think schizophrenia causes people to do acts of absolute pure evil. Now, I'm not.
I don't think the way they're passed, Paul.
No, I think
you know what? In all cases, even a good person, when a person is thinking, and I'm talking to this by way of experiments that they did, because they have isolated people away from everything. And they have turned the Schumann resonance off. They know what happens to a person when that happens. They've turned Earth's magnetic field. They have negated that. They know what happens to a person. If no one is exposed to the Earth's magnetic field, do you not know you turn into an animal just right away? People turn violent.
Is it the pressure?
They get hot flashes and cold flashes. They turn extremely violent.
What?
That's going to happen all over the Earth. This is how some of these emergency services have written manuals that they encourage people to, they have to have them. But these manuals disclose what would happen without the Earth's magnetic shielding, right?
Right.
It discloses that and what to watch for. And, if a person is affected, because a person will go insane, they become incredibly violent. They no longer feel their pain receptors won't work. I like that one, which means if you do something to that individual, they will not feel it.
Right.
It's like some of the people who are walking Earth right now, they cannot feel pain, not because of that. They were born like this.
Okay, now, Mike, are there clones? I'm just going to ask, is there clones living among us in society?
I can't help but to think they are.
Yeah.
I can't help but to think.
Is that
the reason I think that?
Well, they seem to be. Okay, tell me why. Why do you think that?
Well, because this cloning business started with Russia back in the 20s. Okay. Not the 30s, not the 40s. Not the 50s, but the 20s.
Wow.
Okay, now if they began this back in the 20s, and then Germany comes behind them and starts picking up some of the research, and then they take it even further until it hits the 40s, and then they start to classify, right? When they start classifying technical papers regarding cloning and cellular growth and this, that, and the other, when those things are classified, you got a problem, right? Or if the Navy publishes something and they classify it, you have an issue, especially when it comes to cells. We all understand about chemical biological weapons, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about replication of the cells, perfect replication of the cells and the genes that help do that. So if they've been doing this all this time, right, you can't help but to think, of course. And then you start looking, not to be a conspiracy theorist or anything.
Right, because, of course not.
I'm a spiritual conspiracy theorist. That makes sense?
I think so. I think
in other words, there's a spiritual conspiracy going on, but it's a true one. Anyway, these folks, like take, for example, Hollywood. Okay. These guys are obsessed with their youth, correct?
They're obsessed with their youth. They are. I mean, there's so much plastic surgery going on there, man, that,
But do you know that they have paid for services to have their brain digitized, right?
No!
Listen, they paid millions of dollars to have their brains digitized in the hopes that one day they can come back.
I'm just trying
They
to
have
get
had their bodies frozen.
I'm just trying to get my brain reorganized. I definitely don't want somebody That's sort of like the movie.
They're paying for it. They've already paid for it. They paid for services to have their bodies put in cryo,
I know.
in the hopes that someone can be woken back up again. Sometimes when these actors die, they don't really die. They get stuck in cryo. They're doing all this stuff to preserve their life.
Well, they're
right?
dead though, right?
Yeah, they're dead as a doornail.
So they put them in these cryo frozen tubes, these
And preserve them.
And the plan is to wake them back up, bring them back, and try to zap them back into life when technology.
Well, they're still working with the technology, and they say that if they figure this thing out, they'll bring it back to life. They've already paid for this stuff. But my point is, they're obsessed, right, with their lives.
Yes.
If there was a cloning process, Pastor Paul, where a person could be cloned, right?
Yes.
You take that clone, you grow that clone. Hear me close on that. You grow that clone up. Teach that clone everything you know, right?
Right.
Which means your life would have to be well documented to teach the clone everything that you knew, so that in hopes, and have a ceremony so that the spirit of whoever it is can enter back into that body. Now, before anybody thinks that's cuckoo, right? That's done with the skull and bones community in colleges. They teach people how to walk around this earth with a one spirit in their body and themselves. That's what they teach. That's what Skull and Bones is about. It's about it's about some things, but that's what it is. These guys, they're doing that. They already do the transfer of spirits. They teach their children how to walk around with a demon inside them, or one of the spirits that is attached to that family. They teach their children how to walk around like this. They integrate themselves with these spirits, right?
Yeah.
Now, the average person may say, "Oh, I can't believe that." Well, think of this. In the Bible, it says, "Take captive your thoughts." Why would the Bible ever say that?
Because your thoughts, if you don't take captive your thoughts, they can be taken captive for you. They can overtake you. I mean,
what if your thoughts, Pastor Paul? See, man is, I know as a human, sometimes we can be centered on ourselves. But what if your thoughts were more like communications?
Okay. Yes.
All right? Something is speaking to you, and all the time is speaking to you. But as a Christian, we've learned to say no to certain thoughts, right?
Right.
So we take them captive, and we cast down imaginations and all these things that would, But these other folks don't have that.
No.
And so when they, like a schizophrenic person, they always hear voices, people talking to them, and they tell them very specific things. So that's more like a communication. And these guys, when they walk around with these dualities, they actually invite whatever it is in there. They allow it to speak. Yeah. Right. And
I mean, some children have imaginary friends. Okay, which could be like an animal. Yeah, that's not a good thing, is it? I mean,
no,
that's demonic.
Some of them turn out not to be so imaginary.
No,
right?
They're real. They're demons.
I personally think that people empower those things, right?
Yeah.
And you can't just. It's not one of those cases. I don't believe in the case where you just don't pay it attention, it goes away. I don't believe in that.
No.
I believe that if you entertain the devil, he's going to be with you the entire time, which means a demon's going to stay right there once you start talking to it. But if you rebuke it sharply, right? If you stand against it, it cannot work. It also can't work in an environment of forgiveness and love.
Amen.
But, yeah, that was that question. I believe they do have clones.
Let me ask you another question, Mike. This one's been on my mind. I actually threw it. That part about people downloading their consciousness or their is like the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp. Okay, where you could actually download your characteristics, your mannerisms, all these different things into the computer, and then that could live on. Okay, this is going on. They're actually calling it living beyond the grave kind of thing. But let me ask you a question. I asked Heidi this question, and she said, wow, this is a great question. Ask Mike. Okay, so I'm asking you, Mike. And that is, we know our DNA we have human characteristics and traits that get passed down to our offspring. Right. And that they can look at our DNA, and they can figure out, the DNA will tell them what kind of personality we have, not just our physical size, weight, different things that we have, certain susceptible to certain diseases, but actually
Right.
some of our personality traits. Is part of our consciousness get sent down also? I mean, this is a crazy question, but when we say that we live on in our offspring, is there some type of spiritual connection here? I mean, when Jesus said, when you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I mean, what's going on with this, Mike?
I believe that mankind, right? In the body of mankind is a spirit, but then you are the individual, right? So
Yes.
follow me on this.
Okay.
It's just like your grandparents and on down your family line. First of all, we're born in this body. We're born in this body and we grow up with this body, so we believe it. We stay here, right? If everything in the Bible is true, you are a spirit. Your body is separate from you, right? But
Yep.
that's how you get around and do things.
It's your temple.
The reason why we stay in this body is because of our belief in it so much. We don't know anything else, right? We don't know anything else. So if we were ever, because imagine if a person was an adult and then their spirit came down to be put in a body, we could easily leave because we know we're not attached to that body. So we would have faith on a whole new level. But because we're born in the body, that's all we know. We stay there. But I also believe that when you're born, right, because I've seen this with children too much, children say things and do things from people long past. I knew a little guy that was 2 years old. He saw a gold ring and he said, I've been looking for this my whole life. Oh, what does he know about that? And then so I asked him a question. I said, well, were you a gold miner or something? He said, yeah, we put it in a pan. Okay, he didn't know anything about that.
What?
Right? So children come out and say these weird things. There was another case of a young child. He was 3, or no, he was 2.5. He kept crying every night and all this stuff. Come to find out, he was drawing pictures of World War II. And he was talking about this one individual, and he had dreams. Well, guess what happened? He went to go meet the people that were in World War II, right? And he was only, at that point, he was 3 years old. He talked to each and every one of them about things only their friend would have known, because he said he was that guy. He was that guy in World War II. And he had come back. This is what he said. He talked to these guys intimately. He had all of them crying. He was talking about letters that they wrote, and he was apologizing and was very emotional. This happens too much in these days. There are more children being born that swear up and down they were doing different things a long time ago. They even know what the person looks like, where the person lived. They know all this, and they're only like 2 years old. What I believe that is in the flesh. Your flesh is given it has a spirit. Your flesh has a spirit. Your family has a spirit. That's a common spirit, right? Just like Jesus said. Jesus said, I know the spirit that's in man, but I don't want to go there. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to talk about it. He said, I know the spirit that's in man. And I found it ironic that he said, I know the spirit that's in man, but he did not say, I know what your soul is, or I know your soul. That's not what he said.
No.
He said, I know the spirit in man, right?
Yeah.
And that word spirit, of course, it has 5 deviants in the Bible, which means it gravitates towards 5 different things, but it's almost like a common set of characteristics that will be in the body,
right,
passed down from generation to generation to generation. So just like an animal has instincts from its parents, so do we have knowledge, genetic knowledge, right? Predisposed knowledge from our genetic line.
That's important,
right?
because we're not talking about reincarnation here.
No,
we're talking about
No.
genetic transferal, or what's the word? That's not the right word.
Well, like a gift, like playing a piano, right?
Yeah.
If you had a great aunt or your great grandfather could play, then somebody's going to pick that up. If somebody could draw, somebody's going to pick that up.
I have met families where everyone in the family are tremendously musically talented. They didn't learn it. It's passed down through the genes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We see this with athletes. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's easy for us to pick up with a physical. We see a great athlete, then his son comes along and he's just as good or better, and you can see the same physical traits. But I think we can also see some of the people that are brilliant. They're brilliant in math or science, and next thing you know, their siblings are brilliant with math and science. So there's some type of DNA that's being carried on. Part of your characteristics get carried on. Now, some folks
Well,
worry.
they do.
Yeah, and some people
They
worry
do.
about generational curses with this because they'll say, my great-great-great-great-grandfather was a mass murderer or something. Yeah, but there's certain things that can be stopped, and that is through the blood of Jesus Christ. I
Yeah.
mean, don't you agree, Mike?
A generational curse, I would say that's more of something assigned to that family line,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Demons seem to get comfortable. They know people, right?
Yep.
They get used to people. They can, because everybody can't be possessed by the same demon.
Right.
They have to be compatible with you somehow, right? So they can survive or whatever, communicate and all that stuff. But yeah, as far as knowledge being passed down, yes. I also believe that there are things that if we could just believe it. I'm being serious here.
Yeah,
If
I
a
know.
person would stop limiting themselves, if they would stop being the expert on what they cannot do and what everybody else can't do, and actually get up and begin to perform things, I think they would shock themselves. I didn't think I could run 25 miles. I didn't, because I would collapse after running one. And then when I was in the service after basic training, we ran a death run every Friday. I didn't think I could do it. But something happens, and it was when you hit a certain mark and it feels like you're going to collapse and everything else, but you have no choice but to continue, something else takes over.
That is true.
Well, not only in that did it happen, there were certain tasks and skill sets that I had to have. And when you start to push, it's almost like your body goes into another level, and
Yep.
it will accommodate. It also happens with healing. I know for a fact, medically, that when a person is sad or oppressed or something like that, their white blood cells start to die. When they are happy, right? When they're happy, your white blood cells multiply. Your immune system becomes 4 times more powerful than what it used to be, and you set off a chemical signal in the body that tells your cells to start reproducing. That means repair. That's what happens when you're happy.
Yeah.
But when you're sad, the opposite happens.
Yeah.
A shutdown chemical goes into your cells, and they start. Your cells have a signal they can receive to shut down and die.
Yes.
And that's precisely what happens. So,
Very
given that,
good.
if a person can believe, they don't have to be the expert on everything. I think it's where we fail, right? Also, I think it's when it comes to belief, I never believe I can do it, but I always believe Jesus can always do it.
Right.
And because I believe he can do it, I'll just walk into it, and I'm telling you that makes a difference. But I can't believe, it's hard for me to believe I can do anything, but it's easy for me to believe that Jesus can do it all, right?
Amen.
So when I step into that, things start to happen. I believe if people did that, they would begin to access parts of themselves they can never access before. They can stop oppression, depression, all this stuff, feeling negative, all this. They can stop that.
What you're saying is we only use about 10% of our brain. We have tremendous capabilities telepathically, who knows what all capabilities the human body was made with by God himself, that we have, through a period of time, maybe a laziness, who knows, we've kind of let slide some of the great capabilities. I can tell you that, as you said, basic training, athletes, people who thought they could never do certain things, when put to the test, when there was nowhere else left to go, superhuman strength can happen.
That's right.
Whenever
That's right.
I was almost drowned that day when I was in the car accident, broke my neck, I'm underwater, and I can't swim. At least I didn't think I could swim. I could never swim before, but I'm 20 foot underwater, upside down, with a broken neck, in a car, in a seatbelt. I cried out to Jesus because, as you said, Mike, I believe with him you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. And when the seatbelt unhooked and I got myself turned around and noticed that the window was gone, I swam up to the top to get air. And then I went back down and got the guy and came back up again with a broken neck. That's humanly not possible. It's certainly, I wouldn't do that. Like, I wouldn't go jump in 20 foot of water right now and try going down the bottom and going up. I mean, I'd drown probably. But when faced with the absolute, it's do or die, the human body finds something, the Holy Ghost and God in you, He can open up things in you that you didn't even know were there. Would you agree with that? I mean,
Yeah, I do. I honestly think that as we're educated in this world, education teaches us what not to believe. I can go all the way back through my own education, and all they taught me was what not to believe.
Right.
That's what they taught,
Right.
what not to believe. And there's a penalty that comes with believing anything outside of their teachings, right? So even becoming a Christian, Pastor Paul, I had to unlearn just
Yeah.
about everything I learned.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn it. And now I walk around with I fight limitations. You'll never hear me say, I can't do this. No, I won't do that anymore, because I'm not going to be the expert on what does not exist or what I can't do. I've seen the opposite of that too much as a result of that. It's like my entire life just went the opposite. I'm telling you, the Lord can heal a person in an instant. He's already healed them. Here's the problem, though. If people are down here rejecting the healing, they're not going to receive it.
That's right.
You have to receive a healing. He's already healed. He already put the word out, right?
Yeah, you just got to
But
believe
the issue is, if you're going to believe academia, and you're going to say, well, if I don't have this medication, I'm not going to be healed, then that's where you're going to be. Because the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Yeah.
But if you start to receive, that person doesn't have to spend their time trying to believe that somehow that wound can close up. That's not what they have to do. They have to just simply accept the truth of Christ, what he said. That's it. Accept the truth upon themselves. It's easy to believe that somebody else can be healed. Not so easy to believe that you can be healed.
Right.
And we've got to start reversing that, because even at this time we live in, Pastor Paul, what about when the storms actually come? Right now, some of these average storms, Pastor Paul, they're dropping millions of tons of water. Right. Take, for example, in a square
the one
mile.
in Brazil.
Do you know, in a square mile, 1 square mile, 1 inch of water weighs 143 million pounds? Do you know that's a lot of water, right? 17.4 million gallons. That's just with 1 inch of water with 1 square mile. These storms have an ability to drop. We're talking about billions of tons.
Well, Mike,
right?
We just saw in Brazil.
It's getting worse.
We just saw in Brazil 10 inches of rain fell in 3 hours. It's created a mudslide, a huge apocalyptic. I showed the video earlier in the broadcast. Insane mudslides, flash flooding, destroying and killing people. Rain, and you've been talking about these bombs, okay? These rain bombs, these storms. I just saw this week a storm that's moving across America right now. It was about 70% of the entire nation is in this storm, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The clouds that big.
Bigger.
And you were talking
They're
about
getting bigger.
We're going to see it. These winds.
And they're going to quadruple. Yeah, Pastor,
let
think
me
of
ask you
this.
about these wildfires. I got to ask you this because people have been begging me. You mentioned fires, that meteorites and asteroids were going to cause more fires. They're raging right now in California. It's happening in Australia. Last year it happened in Spain and parts of Germany, Europe. Is this because of meteors? Are they starting to set fires, the meteors, the asteroids, as they increase?
You know what? We have a combination of conditions. We have the sun, number one, right? Its infrared emissions are off the scale. They're off the scale. Its X-ray emissions are off the scale. The sun is doing things that you would only observe way out there in the solar system somewhere. So it's totally changing. You have the heat from the sun changing the chemistry of plants, animals, probably us. You also have the atmosphere is altering, it's changing. You have certain protection layers in the atmosphere that are gone. They're just gone. There are a lot of chemical exchanges happening beneath the soil in the air. You have incursions, right? This means more fireballs are coming in, but they're actually penetrating the atmosphere. And when they hit the ground in a dry region that's been soaked in infrared, naturally it's going to catch something on fire. And that's going to be, without warning, these things are taking place. Pastor, without warning, people are, being woken up in the middle of the night saying, leave. You got to go now. You got to go. You don't have time to pack or anything else. You got to go, or you're not going to make it out. So imagine, this summer, these weeks to months coming up, the fires. I have a real caution concerning fire in the first place, a cruel fire. I believe it's going to be, more than what we could potentially see more fires than we've ever experienced.
What?
Right? I mean, ever experienced.
Worse? I mean, because you know how bad they've been in the west coast of the United States now the last 6-7 years. But you're saying globally? Is this globally?
Yeah, think about, instead of just California, think about Texas. Think about places like Romania. Places like that, all sorts of places burning up where they have trees and forests and things that will burn. Not to mention, not only fires from above, but we have a weakened infrastructure down below. And with all the earth movements, It's shaking things apart. Like that volcanic eruption that emitted that sound you played, right?
Right.
That shook the ground. But it shook the ground enough to crack foundations in nearby places, right? So, and our cities in America and in Europe and all over the place have an issue because we're having these earthquakes. And it's really starting to crack the brick. Brick can only take so much, Pastor Paul, and then it breaks down. We're having saltwater intrusion problems. So all of the fresh water that we used to have, right, it's no longer fresh. Salt water, is pouring up into these places. It's almost like the fresh water is being evacuated, salt water is taking its place.
And we're having a serious water crisis, Mike. Is that because we're using more, or is it because we're losing?
No. We can, what the people on the earth could use as much water as they want. The issue is where we had fresh water, it is disappearing. You remember all the reports about the lakes that disappeared, and they ran these reports for about 4 months. You never heard a thing. There were entire lakes that dried up overnight.
Yeah.
Gone. They were gone.
How?
But then they don't talk about them, and the public forgets. But the water has not come back. You have saltwater intrusion taking place in the Middle East. You have saltwater intrusion taking place on the East Coast and the West Coast of the USA. It's also taking place in Brazil. You have the Mississippi, which is contaminated, right? They're actually,
with salt?
The Army Corps of Engineers has been all up and down the Mississippi trying to solve the issue of the salt water coming into the Mississippi River.
How?
The Great Lakes, that water level, right, is artificially being pumped up, right? So you have all these issues and problems, and people are forgetting about them. Here's the biggest one, though. The biggest one is going to be the weather. You have clouds and formations of clouds, and now meteorologists, they're now finally admitting that clouds, because of a change in the atmosphere, because of a compressed atmospheric anomaly, clouds can now hold about 3 to 4 times more than what they usually hold. It's all compacted.
What's causing this atmospheric compression?
Well, you have external forces out there just pressing in on our solar system on all sides. The dynamics of which all of them should be, they have to be named as to what's happening. But it's getting so bad that they're thinking we could potentially have to rename one of the atmospheres. How you like that one? Because we're going to have 2 of the atmospheres condensed into one.
You mean like, right?
That's how much compression.
We have a stratosphere, an ionosphere, an atmosphere.
So one of them is going to be missing, right? It's going to be compressed into one. That's how bad this compression anomaly has been taking place for a long time. Not only that, that means more and more pain in people with joints.
Oh.
They're already having pains.
Yeah.
It's already increased this year, last year and this year alone. Right, I mean, it's off the scales.
It's hurting.
People who have arthritis, people who have bursitis and things like that, due to pressure changes, as the fluid changes in their knees and fingers and elbows and things like that, they feel pain. They feel a lot of pain.
Yep.
This is going to get a lot worse. It's going to get a lot worse. You have, and with all these extremes, right? Because with a compressed atmosphere, Pastor Paul, that means when a high pressure system forms, it's going to draw down the coldest air you ever felt from space itself straight down to the earth. You're going to have these freeze events, right? Now, that means this summer, you could have it in the daytime. It could be 80 degrees or 90 degrees in Indiana, right?
Okay.
Then all of a sudden that night, some weird thing will happen. And then you have frost that same night in the middle of July. Right? And then it goes back to being hot again. So I would expect some of these random anomalies to take place where a blasts of cold air come straight down. I mean, straight down.
And blast of heat. You also say there'll be this.
We're going to have some severe heat in the daytime. We're going to have some severe heat. We're still, last year we had roofing issues. With a lot of claims and people that were hit with rocks that destroyed their shingles off the roof. So a lot of roof repair took place, right? It's going to get worse this year. So like we're coming into a dense part of creation itself, of the universe itself, of the universe. And so we're going to have a lot of incursions coming in this way.
So like Jupiter, flash freezing, almost like flash rain, flash freezing, flash heat, all kinds. all kinds of different phenomenal anomalies that we've never really seen before.
And the rain's going to be hard. The water and the fires, they're going to be the two main things. Can you imagine if it rained 5 inches per hour or 7 inches per hour?
No.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, it'd be over.
Listen, and I'm very sensitive to floods. I know how much damage it can do and how much it messes up people's lives. And every time it floods, my heart goes out to people who get trapped in the middle of this because it destroys just about everything. And now that the ground is shifting, especially in the U.S. and overseas in Europe and Australia, Lord have mercy, Australia needs prayer. Italy really needs prayer because if they get an eruption, Italy, if they get an eruption, they're going to lose part of the coastline. It's cracked too much. It's too frail. Some of the surveys that were done are showing they're just showing some cracks that shouldn't be there, and that whole place could be upended in Italy. That could take a 5.0 earthquake could do it. It really could. And if that's the case, it could set off a chain of events. They're sitting on a monster in that region. And so,
when you say a monster, are you talking about
they're sitting on a monster,
a super volcano or something?
I mean, more than super. It makes. Put it this way: in Italy, right? When you go around Italy, if you look at that that goes around Italy, you're looking at a volcano which has, I think, let me see it. This could be wrong, but I think it contains about 20 Yellowstones. So just think of that.
Yellowstone, danger zone. No.
Think about 20 of them. Right? 20 Yellowstones, and this place constitutes that, because you're looking at places all the way from, Marseille all the way to Rome. That's on the opposite side of the sea there, but that encompasses the entire place. And if it goes, this entire place could be on the water at least 6 miles back. That hits Spain, by the way, right? That means part of Spain is going to be gone, all the way up to Andorra, going on to places up near France, and CERN is in a very strategic place. I think that topographically they have protected or hardened that facility against flooding specifically. I think that they have done this on purpose. But that place is sitting on a monster. The waters cover up very ancient volcanoes, which are waking up. They're cracking.
All right, now let's talk about
activity.
Well, let's talk about what's waking them up. Okay, Planet X, the effects of Planet X. I know we're running out of time, but we got another webinar coming up here, climate crisis. Even the news is using this term. I just noticed today with the wildfires in California, saying that it's because of climate crisis. They don't say what that means. Is Planet X, is these gravity waves, is the waves of energy, the sun volatility, do you see, is this thing getting closer to the point that this is a year 2022 like none other? What does it mean, Mike? What does it mean?
Well, I'm watching the heliosphere, right?
Okay.
And the heliosphere is a telltale sign of what the sun is doing. Keep in mind that just as the core of the Earth puts a magnetic shield around the entirety of the Earth, so does the sun put a shield around our solar system called the heliosphere.
Okay.
When it starts to weaken, it's just like solar flares, right? It's actually, when the sun shoots off a flare, it goes to a weakened part of the heliosphere. It attracts a flare. I'll put it that way. So it's almost like it's perfect, because if there's a place in the heliosphere that is low in magnetics or something like that, then automatically the sun shoots out a flare to it, right? Almost like timing. So every flare is important. Every flare that we've ever had has strengthened the heliosphere. The problem is something is now pressing against our heliosphere with a powerful magnetic force. They picked this up as the CERN probes went past Pluto, so on and so forth. And right now, through observation of certain bodies that orbit in a very strange way, they have picked up this compression event, I'll call it, and it's messing with the heliosphere, which means we have something in proximity to our solar system right now. It's not coming. The force is there right now. Of course, you know that I accept the binary issue, the binary model. Call it what you will, but I'll say the binary model.
All right.
And as this other system comes in close, if we indeed have a binary, right? We are in a binary system. If we are in a binary system, then all the weather phenomena is going to be highly predictable. What's going to happen to the Earth in the next 9, 10 months, 12 months is going to be highly predictable. And it's going to cause some massive and severe problems. Specifically, it begins with strange activity from the sun. The secondary portions of that are fluctuations in our magnetosphere. Now, what will that do? Well, when the magnetosphere starts changing its polarity in places where it shouldn't, where it was always, semi-constant, people start going crazy.
Yeah.
Human beings are not made to live outside of the Earth's magnetic field. We're just not made to do that. Our brains are susceptible to any type of magnetic influence of a not so much a strong one, but a consistent one. And so we're highly susceptible to those changes. When the animals start to migrate in the wrong locations, Pastor Paul, you will know that the influence is here.
Yeah.
Because if we have something headed our way, it's going to have a magnetic influence. That means the animals are going to be the telltale sign. They will start to migrate out of season and in the wrong directions. So if everybody can start watching the animals, they're going to be a telltale sign of what we're actually facing.
Are you
They're
worried
like alarm
about?
clocks.
Are you worried about the tilt of the Earth? Is that
Absolutely, on it. That's going to affect the weather big time, right? We're looking at the storms, the thunderstorms, derechos, microbursts, all these things they're going to become a norm, a very destructive norm. I was looking at the patterns this winter. I can't believe that people are not calling this out. These patterns that we're having, right? And I've looked over the historical data. These patterns that we're having are they're off. They shouldn't be this way. Winter comes and it comes very fast. For certain regions where it should gradually work up, it should be mild and go away,
Right.
Which means our rotation around the Earth has been severely altered. That's what it means. So we can expect 3 seasons of some harshness.
Stan
Harshness.
Deo, I just interviewed him yesterday, and I just posted it about a half hour before we started this broadcast. And it's a great interview, folks, so you should watch it tonight or tomorrow morning. And in the interview, Stan says, you don't understand what's about to happen to our Earth. We're about to go from 4 seasons to 3, actually said soon, and then we'll go to 2 because of the tilt of the Earth, because of the orbital process. Of course, he's and he's saying exactly what you're saying, Mike, that we're going to see be unbelievable. I mean, you talk about extremes. Going from winter to summer, that's basically what you're saying. And maybe real bad winters and real bad summers.
Extreme.
Almost like Mars.
Extreme.
I mean.
Yep, extreme. Look, we've had mild seasons. We have not had rough seasons. A rough season would be this: if one day it hits minus 113 degrees in New York City. That's rough.
That's insane.
Right? Now, but those temperatures already exist on the planet.
Yeah,
they already exist. It gets colder than that in certain regions.
Yeah, that's true.
With the tilt and with the change in our orbit, right? That these extremes are going to be relocated into places where we've never had them before. So that means in the northern portions of the USA, they're going to have Arctic type temperatures. Right? And in places where it's dry, like Arizona, they're going to be flooded all the time. Can you imagine Arizona back on the water again because it keeps raining so much, so moist, no longer an arid region, but a temperate forest region. So we're going to have changes like that until ultimately the Earth's rotation or our days are going to be totally messed up. We're not going to have a consistent rotation of the Earth. And listen to this when you're ready. You ready?
I'm ready.
Some of the cycles of our moon, there's a dramatic issue with the moon. Now, 8 years ago, they were discussing this. Something about the moon. They were doing specific laser measurements. The moon is going to be a lot closer to us in proximity for a few months out of the year. So it's going to look pretty big. Now, that messes up our tides. There's a chance that within the next 2 years, right, it's going to mess up our tides so much that the oceans may swap positions. Put it that way. The moon's proximity to the Earth controls our tidal flow.
Are you
right?
serious?
If the Earth gets closer to us, it's gonna flood some things that we've never seen before.
You mean
we're
the
gonna
moon?
have new land masses in the middle of the ocean, and what's out of the ocean right now may be under it. This could happen. It's already starting to. The moon has a wobble that's getting worse. This wobble is causing it, right, to come closer to the Earth on one side than the other, which means people can look up and they're going to see a huge moon, right? Just a big moon.
Yeah.
The moon stabilizes our tides, which means it stabilizes the water levels, right? So imagine when the tide comes in, that tide being a few feet over what it's supposed to be. And it's all gravity. It's all inertia and gravity, right? So it's not a complicated thing to see or mathematical equation to even replicate. It's just that these things, God has kept these things stable for a long time. I can't help but to reference that one scripture, that the powers of the heavens shall be shaken.
Amen.
Well, how can the powers of the heavens, if the powers of the heavens are going to be shaken, that means right now they're still.
Right.
Right? So if they're shaken, if the powers of the heaven are shaken, that means it'll seem like there's a loss of control of the heavens, which means things are going to be out of order out there, which puts everything on earth out of whack.
Well, let's read that scripture 1 second, Mike. It's in Luke 21, and here's what it says before I get to that verse. In verse 11 says, there will be great earthquakes, shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. Now, here's the verse Mike just quoted in Luke 21:25. There shall be signs in the sun, which we're seeing all this volatility, and in the moon, it's starting to wobble, and in the stars, meteorites are raging by, and we're getting more fireballs and meteors, and upon the earth, distress of nations, with perplexity, confusion. The sea and the waves are roaring now. Okay, men's hearts then failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. So, Mike, you're saying it's coming, it is coming.
Isn't it amazing how it says men's hearts have failed them for fear for looking after those things, or that means they have information. That means they know the process of things that is coming. And it says for, or the reason of, the reason for that is that the powers of the heavens are shaken.
Yes.
So there's no stability in the heavens anymore. Well, no stability in the heavens means the stars are going to be out of position, which really means the earth is out of position. All the stars they're going to be right there, but the earth won't, right? So we're about to go through a little shakeabout time. It's going to be like whack-a-mole with the earth, I guess.
Yeah.
But I hope that people are really ready for this, because even talking about this right now, right, as the years keep going on, knowing what I know, Pastor Paul, when I start talking about storms, it's starting to make me a little, I'm very concerned about people, right?
Yeah.
I'm really concerned this time. The cruel fire thing, right?
Yep.
And you've heard me talk about the stone steps, correct?
Yes, and the coffin.
Watch it come to pass. You watch it come to pass. Surely, it's coming to pass. And when it's already on record from some years ago. It's on record, but it's coming to pass. And when it comes to pass, the USA is going to change that day. And then that coffin event, I believe, will happen right after that. And there we are. So, my goodness, Pastor Paul. I just want to say that to get that on record with you, too. The stone steps is about to take place.
Okay.
It's about to take place.
I'm glad you're putting that on record. The stone steps is about to take place, and that coffin event will happen just soon after.
Yep. That's about to take place.
Mike, we're going to get back together next week. We got so much. Man, we covered a lot of ground tonight, and some really great information you shared, and we appreciate you coming on. Climate crisis, you're going to be one of our key speakers in that one. That's March 11th. People better get ready.
I hope they do, Pastor Paul. And you know what? I'm going to make it a point, Pastor Paul, because I'm changing a few things.
Okay.
I'm going to make it a point to start getting you some graphics so that we can have some kind of reference to look at.
I would
when
love
we're
that.
talking about some of these complicated things so people can see it.
And make it easier to explain. That'd be good, because you got me trying to do, I feel like I'm doing charades. All right, so thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. I'll see you next Thursday, Lord willing.
All right, Pastor Paul. God bless you. It's always an honor, brother.
All right, thank you, brother. Amen.
All right.
Mike from the world, folks.